The World at War campaign is notoriously gritty in a very compelling way. Unlike other campaigns in the series, in World at War there are no delusions of grandeur. You're not infallible. You're just a regular Marine Corps or Red Army recruit fighting to survive the most deadly conflict the world has ever seen. And no campaign mission highlights this fact better than Blackcats, which, aside from having the most bumping soundtrack of the campaign, it showcases a stark duality, unique gameplay. So with that all being said, it's about time to get into the gunner seat of a US Navy Catalina Blackcat. Let's get started. As we dive into the mission, we're introduced to a repertoire of new characters such as the playable protagonist Petty Officer Locke, in addition to some new old favorites of mine being Laundry, Booth, Lachlan, Harrington, Howard, and Morse, as we sail above the South Pacific in the planes Hammerhead and Manta Ray. The mission itself would technically fall into the category of COD vehicle mission, which can sometimes feel gimmicky, but the introduction of the new characters and setting provides a lot of tact, making it feel like a genuine addition to the campaign and not just a cheap add-on to add variety to the campaign, which this is done in a very similar way to Death from Above that was in Call of Duty 4 the year prior. So we kick things off experiencing surprisingly smooth animations maneuvering between the primary and bow gunner spot, which is impressive considering the game is rapidly approaching the age of majority. And we are given our orders to attack the Japanese merchant fleet heading to resupply Okinawa after the US capture of the island of Peleliu. One thing that World at War does really well here is to relate the mission to the player, because even though for this mission we're not playing as the Marines who fought on Peleliu, we know what happened on the island and we know what will happen on Okinawa if these ships aren't stopped. It effectively takes a third-person perspective on the events of the previous missions in the game. And let's be real, those ships are resupplying Okinawa with one thing and one thing only: grenades. So even if one grenade doesn't make it to Okinawa, then it'll be worth it. So now we've spotted the vessels and we're armed with 50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon, and in typical campaign fashion, it's time to absolutely decimate these ships and send all those grenades to the bottom of the Pacific, right where they belong. And looking in hindsight, or I suppose foresight, this part of the mission is actually very similar to the start of the Redemption mission from Black Ops 1, where the player is piloting a Huey helicopter that is attacking the Rusalka ship, which interestingly enough, kind of relating back to it, Blackcats actually takes much inspiration from the bomber mission from the game Call of Duty United Offensive, which was developed by Grey Matter Studios, which interestingly enough got merged with Treyarch. So needless to say, these style of missions are a staple in the Black Ops greater series and Treyarch Productions overall. So going back to it, the music is blasting and we are laying waste to the Japanese merchant fleet. Not a single, and I mean this, not a single pre-cooked grenade will be making it to Okinawa on our watch. But naturally, the baddies don't particularly like us destroying all of their grenade refills, so they send their PT boats to take us out, which does up the ante because up until this point we've been effectively shooting fish in a barrel. But don't be fooled, because the fish have a few tricks up their sleeves, or fish sleeves, gills I guess. The fish were deadly marksmen, but my major struggle was not with them, but with my console FOV, which proved rather difficult and tried to lock onto targets, although the strong campaign aim assist did significantly help. So we finish up. Our mission was complete. The Japanese merchant fleet had been sunk, and we were prepared as players to move on to our next mission, battling it out in Okinawa. But that was too simple. That was too typical, and the fish had been plotting. So we get a distress call on the radio stating that while we were raining death from above on the merchant ships, the Japanese were doing the exact same thing to our fleet that was heading towards Okinawa. In other words, the fish had hit the fan, and it was critical for us to race over to our fleet and press X as many times as possible to rescue all of our survivors. It was about to get real. As our Blackcat soared higher in altitude, we encountered the horror of witnessing waves of Zeros streaming across our screen. We tried to fend off as many as possible, but it was not enough to save Harrington's craft. Rest in peace. We were on our own as our aircraft rounded the corner, allowing for us to see the desolation of our fleet. It was at this time when our aircraft went down to sea level to start assisting with the rescue. You see, the tables had turned. Now we're in the barrel and the fish got the gun. Harrington is long gone. We're alone, but our vigor still remains. We've stopped the grenades from being sent to Okinawa, and now it's time to help the sailors stranded in the water. So we go guns blazing, because remember, the Blackcat plane also doubles as a boat, effectively making us a flying PT boat, which, speaking of PT boats, yes, the Japanese ones were there too, and they're not very happy with us today. So the next part of the mission, things get real. We're fighting off PT boats while Zeros are dive bombing our positions, and all the while we're spamming X as many times as possible to save all the sailors. And this is where the brilliance of the mission is shown, as it's shown in the duality of the events that occurred. At the start of the mission, we had the upper hand. We were raining hellfire on the enemy vessels, sinking them one by one while effectively going unopposed. Meanwhile, in the latter half, we're the ones getting rained down on, with the volleys of Zeros coming straight for for us and our allies, while also fending off waves of PT boats, this time at our eye level. And this goes to show the unpredictability of war, the duality of it, what makes the chaos seem relatable and real, and it goes to show the player is not infallible, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we continue the fight on, pressing deeper into the fleet, attempting to rescue more survivors until we hear that we're running out of ammo. So we were hooped. We were sitting in the water like a fisherman with no worms, with 3 oncoming Zeros streaming directly towards us. It was over. This was the final curtain call for Petty Officer Locke, until we were rescued by the sight of McDonnell Douglas Corsairs racing above, making light work of the Zeros. So we had won. The fish had been fried. And that's why I find this mission so captivating, because it's real. There isn't a delusion of grandeur, because one minute you're firing down on enemy vessels, but the next, the same thing is happening to you. And the interesting thing is, you aren't playing as either of the main protagonists, meaning from a narrative perspective, your character doesn't have to survive to the next mission, which is a very interesting feeling to have while you're playing a mission in a Call of Duty campaign, which most of the times you basically have the main character syndrome going through you, where basically the world revolves around you. But for this mission, you don't have that at all. Another thing that's very interesting is that talking about saving NPCs, which you can do, the key word is can. It doesn't force you to. You're not doing community service. Realistically, you can play through this entire mission and you can save them all, or you can choose to ignore them and not save any of them. The choice is entirely up to you and what you want to do. And that's why Blackcats is the perfect encapsulation of the themes of World at War's campaign. It's brutal, it's gritty, and it's real. And it's definitely worth a replay or a first time playthrough here in 2025. After getting Xbox Series X last summer, I went back and played through the entirety of World at War's campaign, and it was such a refreshing experience, especially contrasting it with the chaotic, silly nature of some recent Call of Duty multiplayer experiences. And that feeling and those themes are the reason why World at War's campaign is so unique. Essentially, in a lot of newer Call of Duty campaigns, you are the main character and the world revolves around you. Basically, if you sneeze, the game catches a cold. However, in World at War's campaign, you are essentially just a playable NPC. The characters that you play as are no different or no more unique than any of the other characters that you engage with. And that's what makes it so refreshing, and that's one thing that a lot of the older Call of Duty games did very well. An excellent example of this would be Call of Duty 4 as well as Modern Warfare 2, where you're playing as the character Soap. And yes, I will say that World at War has its quirks. It's not perfect. I mean, the game is almost 17 years old for goodness sake, but it is a great experience nonetheless. So if you haven't already, comment down below what is your favorite memory from World at War. This doesn't just have to be the campaign or from Blackcats, but you know, multiplayer, zombies, there's a lot of content in this game, and there are a lot of people that experienced it. I mean, heck, it went platinum on Xbox 360. So if you haven't already, make sure you comment that down below. I would be very interested in reading those comments and also replying to them as well. So with that all being said, guys, I hope you went on to enjoy today's video, and if you did, make sure you leave a like on it down below, as well as be sure to subscribe if you enjoy my content. All subscriptions, likes, and comments are very much appreciated. So once again, thank you very much for watching. I've been your host, Deeper Jungle, and as always, I hope to see you in the next one.